What if the biggest secret to living to 100 is not hidden inside an expensive supplement, not inside a cutting-edge biohacking clinic, and not even inside a medication? What if the answer has been sitting quietly on dinner tables for thousands of years? Because when researchers study the healthiest, longest-living populations on Earth, the places known as blue zones, they consistently find something surprising. These people are not obsessing over calories. They are not eating ultra-high protein diets every 3 hours. And many of them are not doing extreme workouts. Instead, they eat a very specific category of foods almost every single day. And here's where this gets even more interesting. A Nobel Prize-winning discovery helped explain why these foods may dramatically slow aging at the cellular level. Not through magic, not through hype, but through deep metabolic pathways that influence inflammation, insulin, cellular repair, mitochondrial function, and something called nutrient sensing. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your body is constantly making decisions. Every meal either pushes your biology toward growth and accelerated aging or toward repair and longevity. Think of your metabolism like a city. When insulin stays chronically elevated, inflammation rises, blood vessels stiffen, fat accumulates around organs, and the repair crews inside your body never get time to clean up damage. It's like a city stuck in permanent rush hour traffic. But certain foods activate a completely different environment. One associated with metabolic flexibility, lower inflammation, better gut bacteria, healthier blood vessels, and more efficient cellular recycling. And this is exactly where the Nobel Prize-winning science becomes important. In 2016, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded for discoveries related to autophagy, the body's internal recycling and repair system. Autophagy helps cells remove damaged components before they become dysfunctional. This process is now considered one of the most important mechanisms connected to healthy aging and longevity. What's fascinating is that specific everyday foods, especially fiber-rich plant compounds, polyphenols, fermented foods, healthy fats, and certain fasting supportive eating patterns appear to support many of these same longevity pathways. Not by curing aging, but by helping the body function the way it was designed to. And the most powerful part, these foods are not what most people expect. They're not exotic superfoods flown in from remote mountains. In fact, many are inexpensive, simple, and overlooked precisely because they're so ordinary. In this video, we're going to break down the real science behind longevity and nutrition in a calm, practical way. No hype, no miracle claims, just physiology, research, and actionable habits that may genuinely improve the quality and length of your life. We'll cover the foods linked to lower inflammation, better blood sugar control, healthier mitochondria, improved gut health, and enhanced cellular repair. We'll also discuss the daily habits that activate these longevity systems naturally, and some of these findings may completely change the way you think about healthy eating. Because longevity is not about eating less. It's about sending better signals to your body. Today, we'll cover 6 major longevity insights, why chronic insulin elevation may accelerate aging faster than most people realize, the surprising everyday foods that activate cellular repair pathways, how fiber feeds your gut bacteria and influences inflammation and lifespan, why olive oil, nuts, and healthy fats support metabolic flexibility and brain health. The connection between fasting, autophagy, and longevity signaling, and why social eating, meal timing, sleep, and stress may matter just as much as the food itself. Let's begin with one of the most misunderstood drivers of aging in the modern world, chronically elevated insulin. Most people think aging is simply about getting older, but biologically, aging is often accelerated by repeated metabolic stress. And one of the biggest forms of stress your body experiences today is constant overfeeding combined with constant insulin stimulation. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every time you eat, especially ultra-processed carbohydrates and sugar, your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin itself is not bad. In fact, it's essential for survival. It helps move glucose from your bloodstream into your cells so you can produce energy. But problems begin when insulin stays elevated all day long. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine insulin as a storage hormone, like a warehouse manager. Its job is to take incoming fuel and decide where to store it. When food is constantly arriving, the warehouse manager never gets a break. Eventually, the storage system becomes overloaded. Your cells begin resisting insulin's signal. This is insulin resistance. At first, the pancreas compensates by producing even more insulin, and this can continue for years before blood sugar even becomes abnormal. Many people are metabolically unhealthy long before they are diagnosed with diabetes. And why does this matter for longevity? Because high insulin does much more than affect blood sugar. Chronically elevated insulin is associated with increased inflammation, accelerated fat storage around organs, higher triglycerides, oxidative stress, vascular damage, and impaired cellular repair mechanisms. Research also links insulin resistance to cognitive decline, fatty liver disease, cardiovascular disease, and reduced mitochondrial efficiency. In other words, many people are not simply aging, they are metabolically aging. And this is where the diets of long-living populations become so fascinating. In regions associated with exceptional longevity, meals are typically built around minimally processed foods that naturally regulate insulin instead of overstimulating it. Beans, lentils, vegetables, nuts, olive oil, fermented foods, herbs, and fiber-rich plants create slower, steadier metabolic responses. These foods don't create metabolic chaos, they create metabolic stability. One major reason is fiber. Fiber acts almost like a braking system for glucose absorption. Instead of sugar flooding the bloodstream rapidly, digestion slows down, blood sugar rises more gradually, insulin remains more controlled, and this changes the hormonal environment inside the body. What the research shows is that stable insulin levels may help preserve metabolic flexibility, your body's ability to efficiently switch between burning glucose and burning fat. This flexibility appears strongly associated with healthier aging and lower chronic disease risk. Now, here's the mistake many people make. They focus only on calories. But your hormones respond to information, not just energy quantity. 2 meals with identical calories can produce completely different insulin responses. For example, a breakfast of sugary cereal and fruit juice may spike glucose rapidly and leave you hungry 2 hours later. But eggs, vegetables, olive oil, nuts, and fermented yogurt create a far more stable metabolic response, even if calories are similar. Your body cares deeply about the hormonal message of food, not just the math. And this is one reason longevity researchers consistently emphasize whole food dietary patterns over rigid calorie obsession. Now let's connect this to the Nobel Prize-winning science we mentioned earlier. When insulin remains elevated continuously, your body stays in a growth and storage state. But autophagy, the cellular cleanup process associated with healthy aging, tends to activate more effectively when insulin levels fall and nutrient signaling becomes quieter. Think of it like this. Your body cannot fully focus on deep repair while it's constantly processing incoming fuel. This is why meal spacing, lower sugar intake, metabolic flexibility, and occasional fasting windows may all support healthier aging pathways. Not because food is bad, but because your cells need periods of repair just as much as periods of nourishment. So what can you actually do starting today? Here are a few simple protocols supported by metabolic research. First, build meals around protein, fiber, and healthy fats instead of refined carbohydrates alone. Second, reduce ultra-processed foods that create rapid glucose spikes. Third, try allowing 12 to 14 hours overnight without eating. For many people, this gently lowers insulin exposure and supports metabolic recovery. Fourth, prioritize movement after meals. Even a 10-minute walk can significantly improve glucose handling. And fifth, stop thinking only about weight. Start thinking about metabolic signals, because longevity is not merely about staying thin. It's about creating an internal environment where inflammation stays lower, mitochondria function efficiently, blood vessels remain healthier, and cells have time to repair themselves properly. Now let's talk about the foods that surprise longevity researchers the most. Because when people hear the phrase, live to 100, many imagine rare supplements, expensive powders, or complicated anti-aging protocols. But the truth is almost the opposite. Some of the most powerful longevity-supporting foods are incredibly ordinary. Beans, lentils, olive oil, nuts, mushrooms, green tea, fermented vegetables, and dark leafy greens. Not because they contain one magical nutrient, but because they influence multiple biological systems at the same time. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every food you eat acts like information. It sends signals to your genes, hormones, gut bacteria, immune system, and mitochondria. And certain foods appear to activate what scientists call survival pathways, systems associated with stress resistance, repair, and resilience. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body is like a house exposed to small amounts of daily wear and tear. Tiny cracks form constantly from oxidation, inflammation, stress, toxins, and energy production itself. Now, ultra-processed foods often add more damage than repair. They flood the system with unstable blood sugar spikes, inflammatory oils, and excess calories without delivering many protective compounds. But longevity-supporting foods do something different. They provide tiny biological training signals that encourage the body to strengthen itself. This concept is sometimes called hormesis, a small beneficial stress that makes the system more resilient. For example, plants naturally produce compounds called polyphenols to protect themselves from environmental stress. And when humans consume these compounds, our cells appear to respond by activating defense and repair pathways. What the research shows is that polyphenol-rich foods are associated with lower inflammation, improved vascular function, healthier brain aging, and better metabolic health. And this is one reason long-lived populations consistently consume deeply colorful, plant-rich diets. Not necessarily vegetarian, but plant-centered. Take extra virgin olive oil, for example. Most people think of olive oil simply as a healthy fat, but high-quality olive oil contains powerful polyphenols that may reduce oxidative stress and support cardiovascular health. Research from Mediterranean dietary patterns consistently shows associations with lower rates of heart disease and cognitive decline. And here's something important many people miss. Longevity diets are rarely extreme. They are sustainable. That matters because your body responds to patterns repeated over decades, not temporary perfection for 3 weeks. Now let's talk about beans and lentils. These foods repeatedly appear in regions with exceptional longevity. Why? Because they are metabolically unique. They combine fiber, plant protein, minerals, and slow-digesting carbohydrates in a way that stabilizes blood sugar instead of overwhelming it. Think of them almost like time-release energy. Instead of rapidly flooding the bloodstream with glucose, digestion happens slowly and steadily. This supports insulin control, gut health, satiety, and energy stability. And interestingly, populations consuming legumes regularly often show lower rates of cardiovascular disease and improved lifespan markers. Now here's another overlooked category: mushrooms. Certain mushrooms contain compounds that appear to support immune regulation and reduce oxidative stress. Some varieties also provide ergothioneine, a unique antioxidant being studied for its potential role in healthy aging and cellular protection. Again, this is not magic. It's cumulative biology, small protective inputs repeated daily over decades. And one of the most fascinating foods in longevity research may actually be fermented foods. Foods like yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, and fermented vegetables help support the gut microbiome, the massive ecosystem of bacteria living inside your digestive tract. And this matters far more than most people realize. Your gut bacteria help regulate inflammation, immune function, neurotransmitter production, insulin sensitivity, and even appetite signaling. In many ways, your microbiome behaves almost like an additional metabolic organ. When people eat highly processed diets low in fiber and diversity, beneficial bacteria begin to decline. But fermented foods, combined with fiber-rich plants, help nourish a healthier microbial environment, and healthier gut diversity has repeatedly been associated with better metabolic health and healthier aging outcomes. Now notice the bigger pattern emerging here. The goal is not to chase one superfood. The goal is to create a biological environment that supports repair instead of chronic damage. That means your daily eating pattern matters more than isolated hacks. So what does this look like practically? Here's a simple longevity-focused plate. Half the plate should be colorful vegetables and fiber-rich plants. One section should include protein from fish, eggs, legumes, or clean animal sources. Healthy fats can come from olive oil, nuts, seeds, or avocado, and include fermented foods several times per week. Simple, sustainable, and metabolically intelligent. Because the people who reach 100 rarely depend on miracle interventions. They build resilient biology through consistent daily signals repeated for decades. Your gut microbiome is crucial because one of the biggest discoveries in modern longevity science is that humans are not biologically operating alone. Trillions of bacteria inside your digestive system are influencing nearly every major system connected to aging. Your immune system, your metabolism, your inflammation levels, your brain chemistry, even your cravings. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Inside your intestines lives a massive ecosystem of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, and microbes that constantly interact with your cells. And these microbes are not passive passengers. They are metabolically active. Think of your microbiome like a giant internal chemical factory. The food you eat determines what this factory produces. Feed it processed sugar, ultra-processed foods, artificial additives, and low-fiber meals, and many harmful bacterial strains begin to dominate. But feed it fiber-rich vegetables, legumes, herbs, nuts, fermented foods, and diverse plant compounds, and completely different chemical signals begin emerging. This is one reason researchers studying long-lived populations repeatedly find extraordinary microbial diversity in healthy older adults. And diversity matters because a resilient microbiome behaves almost like a balanced rainforest ecosystem. Many different beneficial organisms work together to regulate inflammation, produce nutrients, and maintain the intestinal barrier. When diversity collapses, inflammation often rises, and chronic inflammation is one of the strongest biological predictors of accelerated aging. In fact, scientists sometimes call this process inflammaging, the slow, chronic inflammatory state associated with aging and modern disease. Now let me explain one of the most important mechanisms here. When beneficial gut bacteria digest fiber, they produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids, especially butyrate. And butyrate is incredibly important. It helps nourish the cells lining your colon, supports insulin sensitivity, regulates inflammation, strengthens the gut barrier, and may even influence brain function. In many ways, fiber is not actually feeding you first. It's feeding your microbes, and then your microbes produce compounds that help protect you. That changes the way we should think about food entirely, because many people ask, what supplements should I take for longevity? But a better question may be, what should I feed the beneficial organisms already living inside me? Now here's the modern problem. The average ultra-processed diet is extremely low in diverse fibers and plant compounds. Many people eat the same refined foods repeatedly: white flour, sugar, industrial oils, processed snacks, while consuming very little microbial nourishment. As a result, the microbiome becomes less resilient, and this can affect far more than digestion. Research increasingly links poor gut health to obesity, insulin resistance, depression, autoimmune dysfunction, cardiovascular disease, and neurodegenerative conditions. This is why some longevity researchers now view the gut as a central control system for healthy aging. Now let's make this practical. What foods appear most beneficial for microbial diversity? First, legumes. Beans and lentils contain resistant starches and fermentable fibers that beneficial bacteria love. Second, colorful vegetables. Different plant colors contain different polyphenols and fibers, which feed different microbial species. This is why dietary diversity matters so much, not just healthy eating variety. Third, fermented foods. Foods like kefir, yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, and fermented vegetables may help introduce beneficial bacteria while supporting microbial balance. One recent study even found that fermented foods were associated with increased microbiome diversity and reduced inflammatory markers. Fourth, herbs and spices. Garlic, onions, turmeric, rosemary, oregano, and cinnamon contain compounds that may support beneficial bacterial activity while helping regulate inflammation. And fifth, reduce excessive, ultra-processed foods, because many processed foods create a kind of microbial starvation effect: low fiber, low diversity, high inflammatory load. Now here's another fascinating connection to longevity. Your gut bacteria also influence appetite hormones. When your microbiome is healthier, hunger signals often become more regulated naturally. This means many people are not simply lacking willpower. They may be dealing with disrupted metabolic signaling. Again, root causes matter. And this is why sustainable longevity nutrition is not about punishment. It's about creating an internal environment where healthy biology becomes easier. Now, I want you to think about this differently moving forward. Every meal is either feeding inflammation or feeding resilience. Every bite is communicating with trillions of organisms that directly affect your future health. And the beautiful part is this: you do not need perfection. Research suggests the microbiome can begin improving relatively quickly when people consistently increase fiber diversity and reduce ultra-processed foods. Small, repeated signals matter. That's how biology changes over time. If this is helping you see health through a deeper metabolic lens, consider subscribing. Every day we break down the physiology behind energy, fat loss, inflammation, and longevity in a practical way you can actually apply to real life.